Okay. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Karen Kraskow. This is Frank Sr. and Joan Barnhill-Revioso. We're honored by their presence, two professional singers. Frank has traveled internationally to Denmark and is an NEA award-winning SAG-AFTRA jazz vocalist, born and raised in Harlem. And Joan sings professionally. I want to thank them for joining us from a significant distance and generously consenting to share their stories with us so that designers might understand better how their work might respond to the needs of people with blindness and low vision encounter in their daily lives. Thank you for inviting us to share what has been for me over a year's worth of research for an article which I just shared with you, which will be published in a book associated with the exhibit opening in April 2018 at the Cooper Hewitt Museum, entitled The Senses Beyond Vision. As for my own background, I studied industrial design at Rhode Island School of Design and Pratt Institute, and have been currently interviewing users whose needs are often not fully understood. And in attending to them, we expand our options and include all users while making the environment a better place for all. I met Joan as an interviewer at New York Public Library's Visible Lives project, Oral Histories of the Disability Experience. Frank was interviewed by another interviewer, Joel Fram, and both their audio records are archived at oralhistory.nypl.org. I can send you these links. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you, design students, what you hope most to gather from this discussion. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and a sentence or two about what interests you in this area.
So why don't we start with Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Jacobson,
Uh-huh.
and my studio partner and I are working on a studio project that combines sustainable design with designing a space for an older couple who have some disabilities and but yet have enjoyed a full life of travel and art and want to continue to age in place and have their home stay comfortable for them as they age.
Could I ask, are we all clear on what sustainability is? Should we ask the experts in the room for a definition, or do we feel comfortable enough with it? Why does it sound, could you tell us what sustainability is?
Sustainability is, for us, I guess, a new way of designing where we try to use products that are that come from sustainable sources. Say, for instance, a sofa that the frame is made with wood that comes from a forest that is not just being cut down and left for dead, but for then replanting the forest so that it will regrow and stay sustainable, that we'll be able to reuse the wood again in the future. And then not getting rid of trees that are helping to clean the air in our environment. Also, it encompasses using products that are able to be renewed, reusable, and also incorporated in that is that the environment that we're creating is a healthy environment, that the air we're breathing, the water we're drinking, the entire environment that our clients are living in is clean, is healthy, sustainable, to promote the wellness of the people who are using the home. Also things come into play with trying to save water in a structure, trying to conserve energy by your lighting, by using less electricity, using less fossil fuels. So coming up with different types of energy, solar energy, geothermal energy, wind power. So it's a lot of different things that come together under the umbrella of sustainable design.
Thank you very much. It's not wasting the planet, not damaging the planet.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's another aspect of the design problem that you're solving, and another aspect, another perspective from which you're approaching it. I see.
Hi.
I'm sorry, would you state your name?
My name is Jumana.
Jumana?
I'm Michelle's partner in the project.
Uh-huh.
And I just want to understand how me as a designer, I can design spaces that accommodate everyone and all their needs.
Thank you. Jumana, Michelle, Jumana, and zombies?
My name is Gabriela. I'm in a group with Phoebe and Ken.
Phoebe and Ken, could you speak
Could
up
you
a tiny bit?
And I want to learn about like how to design a space that kind of like what Jemana said, that accommodates people's needs.
Accommodates people's needs?
Hi, I'm Phoebe.
Phoebe?
Really, the previous studio I took at my undergrad, we had a studio that was all encompassed about ADA, but it really only kind of looked at wheelchair accessibility. We never really got into death or visual impairness, and even like loss of smell. So I think it
Even like, I'm sorry.
losing your sense of smell. You walked into a coffee shop, and obviously you want to be able to stay there with the smell of the baked goods and the coffee. So kind of driving that force, finding new ways to.
I'm sorry, I missed the part about the coffee shop.
Like, if, say for instance, if you lose your sense of smell, you would want to walk into a coffee shop that keeps you welcomed in there with the smell of baked goods and the coffee beans and maybe what else is going on. So
Okay.
kind of different ways to design for different loss of senses.
Different abilities and senses. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Ken, and
Ken.
I'm interested in how we can design a safe space for those people lost their, for people with disabilities.
Okay. Well, thank you all. I will be asking our consultants, Joan and Frank, questions that will hopefully elicit issues in their lives that could be helped by design. Some of these questions will bring out ideas we have discussed before and are in the article, and may not seem at first to address the issues in your assignment, which I have read. But I think you will see that when tactility or sound is turned to for a design solution, or smell, as Phoebe mentioned, in a navigation system or a cooking pot, that direction can be applied in other areas that we might not exactly touch on. So we hope to stimulate creative thinking. And I know designers are not locked into one item or one area. I hope you will find the discussion applicable to your work, and we will leave time for questions. As on some of the issues discussed, I have also interviewed other users for the article. I may add to Frank and Joan's comment by referring to the article. One thing that we learned from this is that users, like designers, differ in their relationship to technology. Some cotton to the latest tech. Frank is one of those. And some devise homegrown solutions which get the job done and may also inspire or inform us. I apologize for reading, but I'm just getting over a fall and sometimes have to take the easy route. Okay, so my first question is, how do you guys get around this complex city? How do you cross a street? How do you find the location you're going to? Who wants to start?
Ladies first.
Frank and I are old buds, so I was waiting for that. I was his voice teacher at one point. The skills you need to get around differ as you have to use them, but most of the time, you try not to burden people who may assist you, and you always take charge. If someone does assist you, you are always in charge, and that is the thing you learn first, and the thing you'd better know when you go to do it. When you cross the street with someone, you take their arm. They will not grab or hold you, and if they try, you have to make sure it's done the way you're comfortable, and so you may take their hand away and put your hand on their arm, that kind of thing. But when you cross the street with someone, you have to know exactly where you're going. Sometimes you'll name a building, sometimes you'll just say, I'm crossing 72nd South to North, whatever it is. But you don't just cross the street. You can't do it without some direction to your assistant. And the streets that you can cross by yourself are generally the one-way sort where traffic doesn't go two ways and you have to read twice as much of it. So I don't know of any sightless person that crosses Broadway or crosses avenues generally, unless they're going one way. And certainly you don't cross town streets like 72nd or 86th, because the traffic's gonna go both ways. So generally, that's your parameter for deciding to cross the street yourself. Sometimes I won't cross in the rain if there's too much noise around me, or raindrops hitting my ears, that kind of thing. I will defer to someone else. If I'm tired, if I'm sick, if I'm on medication, if cough medicine with codeine, that kind of thing, I won't do it at all. But I can. All sightless people who travel a lot must absolutely know how to cross streets on their own. And you only take assistance when you need it, and on streets where you know you're going to need to use it.
I want to turn for a minute before we hear from Frank, who has a lot of information about this. Navigating the environment is the first starting point for design thinking in this portion of the article. Chris Downey, who's a blind architect, he became blind, I think, in his 40s. I say here, listens acutely to the sound of traffic. I'm sure Joan does as
yes, very much, and so does Frank, I'm sure.
A person stepping on a metal plate on the sidewalk, the footsteps of other pedestrians, and other cues in the environment. These contribute to a sense of direction. Chancey Fleet, who's a tech consultant who's also blind, crosses a street by listening to the sounds of traffic. The parallel surge, traffic going in the same direction as she is, indicates it's okay to cross in that direction. If traffic is traveling perpendicular to her line of travel, she must wait.
Right.
If you have anything to add, just jump in.
I just did this with my hand to show where perpendicular sounds like it is.
When she goes to a place that is unfamiliar, she prepares by printing out a T-map, a tactile map on an embossed printer. The map, with its raised dotted lines and street names in Braille, provides her with a mental model of her journey. I think this is an important principle because I think you will find that people, and Joan prefers the term sightless, other people prefer the term blind, rely, unfortunately, a great deal on memory. And so having a mental sense from a map of the area you're going to be traversing is very strength-giving, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. The map with, let's see, if the crossing is especially difficult because a market has recently been set up in the street, for instance, she uses the app Be My Eyes on her smartphone. With this app, she can scan the environment with her phone's camera and talk with a volunteer who views her images and can suggest the best way to navigate. Right.
Hi, how you guys doing? Good morning.
Good morning.
And to follow up on what Joan was saying about waiting for assistance or getting assistance, I mean, me personally, when I was 30 years old, I didn't even think about asking anyone, could I cross the street? I was crazy, Now, because I'm much older, anytime I'm standing on a corner and someone offers, even if I know where I'm going, if someone offers, I'll accept it. And so if you ever run across a blind person and you want to assist them, just offer your elbow. Just put it out there and say, would you like to take my arm? And then they'll grab your arm, go the rest from there. But
Not grab them.
Don't
no,
ever.
don't grab. I mean, just think of yourselves. You don't want to be grabbed, you know. So you just keep that in mind when you approach the blind, because you're going to startle them first of all, and second of all, it's just disrespectful. A lot of people will try to grab your clothes, pull on your
Oh,
clothes.
God,
Who wants
please.
to be pulled on, you know? So just offer your elbow, and they'll know what to do from there, you know. I travel. I love technology in terms of not so much computer, but the iPhone. The iPhone has been a game changer for blind folks, especially because it does give us an opportunity to use GPS systems to really go to a city and not feel totally lost. Now, if I'm in a hotel and I have no idea where I am, I can always somehow with apps that are made specifically for blind people, or I could just ask Siri, where's the nearest McDonald's? And I say, give me walking directions to it. You start walking, she'll say, okay, you're on the way. Now you're gonna go to the corner, so-and-so avenue, make a left. She's gonna tell you all of this. If you're walking the wrong way, Siri's gonna say, turn around. So it's that simple. It's that easy for a blind person to be able to get help in an unfamiliar place. We have all kinds of apps that tell us what streets we're on, what we're passing, stores called Blind Square. But again, the best thing really for anyone, because not everyone's a smartphone user. I don't think Joan uses the smartphone. So she relies on her natural instincts and skill. The cane is the deal, and getting that texture from the ground. Like if I'm walking out in the street, I try to find the line in the sidewalk. That'll keep me kind of knowing that I'm going straight. Doesn't go all the way down the block, but it gives you an idea that you're walking in the right direction. Now in Japan, they have a line in the middle of, in Tokyo especially, they have a line in the middle of the sidewalk, and the cane just rests in that groove, and you just walk along that groove, and people walk on either side of you. And you know, little things like that is what we need. The change of texture, maybe the sidewalk is rough here, that'll let you know that there's an entrance you're passing.
Or you can, some people, I know I can do this, I can follow a building line with my eyes. I can't really see it, but I have some sense of where the buildings are, and I can follow it and kind of look at it, and I can tell where spaces are when that stops. So I can use the building lines. It's the last vestige of vision, and it doesn't involve a sight, an image, but it involves the sound waves coming back to you from another object, and I can use that.
Is that called facial vision?
Yes, it's a misnomer. It's certainly confusing.
It's like the
I can
bat,
use it.
really. You know, you're listening, you're using those ears to get that sound that's coming back to you.
And it doesn't feel like a sound. It feels more sort of like
Spatial.
claustrophobia.
Yeah, it's a spatial.
Kind of.
So
But
if
it
you
really
take your
helps.
hand and you
There's
put it
a
up
wall
over your
there,
face, if you guys take your hand, you put it up over your face,
like this.
and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into your hand, and slowly part your hand, you'll hear the difference in the change of sound.
Right, and like this wall over here. I don't know what's a wall, but I know where it is.
Shall we try that?
I just
Yeah.
did it. I just looked over.
The counting of
The hand.
So just take your hands, put them up in front of your mouth like that, and count.
Out loud.
Count out loud out loud so you can hear it.
2, 3,
Now listen for the closeness of how that sounds.
6,
Now slowly part your hand and
8,
keep doing it.
9.
Bring your hands back as you count. You hear the difference in
Yeah.
how that sound changes.
Yeah.
And you can do that at home anytime. I mean,
Oh,
Right?
Everyone doing it.
you can do it. You can face a
Think we
wall
can understand?
and turn away from the wall. You'll hear your voice
You'll
change.
hear it, yeah.
So
Yeah.
understanding space by the reflection of your own voice.
Or whatever sound you want. I have a friend. The first thing he'll do when he walks into a room, he'll go like that. That'll tell him how large the room is.
Right.
Right? So, and if you're thinking of home, I mean, really, especially for blind people, different textures on the ground, different sounds for different areas, maybe a buzz here, maybe a soft ring here, something very subtle so that other people won't recognize it, but you will know where you are on your property. If you have a great deal of property and you want to get around, you know. So it's really all about texture.
I should say that this was originally in the article, but it was placed somewhere else in the exhibit. The San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind, designed by Chris Downey and others. There's a wonderful video at ARUP, A-R-U-P, and I'd be happy to send you the link, that shows how they used computer simulation of the sounds that the surfaces made, which would give information of whether they're in the waiting room, whether they're in a conference room, how large the hallway is. So Chris tapped different surface materials and kind of tried to make a musical composition of the sound in the waiting room versus the sound in the hallway leading from it. And the computer simulation, one could play that kind of streetscape or a musical composition to see what it would sound like before it was built.
Interesting.
So you can actually tell, I'm told, the dimensions of the space, which direction it's going in by the reverberation of the cane on the ground surface. And he selected surfaces that would make that as clear as possible.
Indeed.
Frank, would you like to demonstrate voiceover in Blind Square on your phone?
Let's see if we can get a. You know how
Are
when
you having an affair with Siri or
yeah,
not?
no, this is Blind Square. And the thing is, you know how demonstrations work when you're doing it for people, it never works.
Yeah, technology.
Well, let's see. The Blind Square is an app that that is used. It's one of the apps that a person made for blind people in particular. So I don't know if it has many visuals on the screen. Maybe you've seen it before.
Yes, a little.
Yeah, so I don't think the visuals do it as much as the actual descriptive of direction and so forth. So the iPhone, every iPhone has accessibility, has a built-in voice. So you can go home and turn on your smartphone, and then you will hear.
Photos, camera, calendar, Sunday, October 8th, maps, clock, 11.
Those are all the apps that are on the screen. I have the curtain dark because it saves battery. I don't need it, right? So every app you touch on the screen tells you what you're touching.
Stocks, wallet,
Can you hear that?
Yes.
messages,
So
maps,
now
doc, page 2 of 8, page 3 of 8,
I'm gonna go.
Blind Square,
I'm
recently
gonna open
updated.
Blind Square.
Circle alert, Blind Square has been updated to version 4.60. Would you like to read the release notes? Yes, no, button. Search, button.
Okay, now let's see how close. It'll give you an approximate, depending on where you are.
GPS accuracy is poor, 215 feet.
So right now it's just trying to find itself. And
Your location. Nearest crossing is 3rd Avenue and East 69th Street. Distance 245 feet at 3 o'clock. Address is 159 East 69th Street, New York.
see now it has us at the wrong address right here. But that's because we're upstairs inside. So, you know,
But we have two entrances.
you can't, the connection, it only works on cell for outside basically. So once you're outside, you're passing this address, it'll say 170 Seventh Avenue or whatever. It'll tell me what this place is. You can search for anything around, or so that's basically how it works. You can search. It has all kinds of categories. You can break it up. But the main thing is it'll tell you the heading that you're walking, what you're passing, and if you're in a cab or something like that, and you want to know where you are because you think you're getting ripped off, this will tell you. You're going the wrong way.
So I'll just add to that two things. One, this works on GPS, as Frank said, but GPS doesn't penetrate the interiors of buildings. So there are devices called beacons or proximity sensors that can be posted at different points. In some hotels and airports, beacons placed at the reception desk or the cafe, the restroom, communicate via Bluetooth with the user's smartphone, and they can tell where the room is located, how to get there, as well as how near or far they are. Were you going to say
And the problem with that is that we still have to get these beacons placed in all of these public buildings in order
Right.
for it to really be successful, and it's slowly getting there, but so that's great because that's where we really need it. You walk into a new building or a new hotel, you want to have an idea where the elevator is. You want to have an idea where the restrooms are.
Right.
This will tell you that if they have the beacons.
I'm
And
just,
they'll tell you if they don't, right?
Well, they won't pick up it.
It won't pick up,
They
yeah.
won't, they just won't
Right.
pick up.
so I'm going to just piggyback on what Frank said about Blind Square.
I just wanted to say one thing about the other thing, the beautiful thing about Blind Square also, you can do turn-by-turn directions, so you can hook it right up to Google or Maps on the Apple. And you can also explore a route before you take it, a virtual route. So if I want to know how to walk to so-and-so, I can just listen to the directions here before I go.
So maybe,
And then I'll have an idea when I'm out there.
so maybe this is clear already from what Frank said, but I'm just going to say he speaks his starting location into the phone, and it responds with step-by-step voice directions. 17th Street and 7th Avenue, he says to his phone as he disembarks the bus to Manhattan. Turn right, the phone responds. Walk 2 blocks straight, and so on. At intervals, Blind Square, Frank tells me, lets him know how close he is to his destination. 100 feet, 50 feet, and so on. The closer he is, the more the app talks. If he wishes, Frank can set it to tell him about places of interest he is passing, should he like to stop by. When he arrives at his destination, a ring will sound. You use this internationally as well, isn't that correct?
Yes, I did. It was a little, I just came back from Denmark, and it was a little hard for me there because the GPS, the voice is English here. So I was trying to talk, read all of these avenues and streets in Danish, and just wasn't happening.
And he says that.
But it tried.
A design recommendation that Frank had for that was that in addition to helping him find streets and building locations, since it's based on maps, it's based on maps, and he would like it to tell him when he's in a park or an open area which doesn't have that grid. The footpath is 4 feet ahead. When you get there, turn left. Paths are not yet describable by location in the same way buildings and streets are.
And that's a big thing for me as a blind person, because like what Joan was saying before, if you have a building line or a grid, you kind of can work your way through. But if you're in a total open area, parking lot, water, a park, it's much harder for a blind person to get around.
You probably know the Audible pedestrian signals, those yellow boxes on street corners. Do you use those, Joan?
I've hit a few. I've not had to. I guess I could if I needed to, but I haven't.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can hear lights change if you're lucky.
Mhm.
And they don't, you have to hear the little click, from the light, but you'd have to be standing pretty close to it.
Mhm.
The one good thing about the Audible traffic lights is that if you're in a place where you're not familiar, again, once you press that button, you may be able to hear where the crossing, if it's angled, because
Right.
you're gonna have a
Yeah.
one over there too.
Right, and you'll hear
So
where they
you'll
both-
hear that.
You'll hear both of them.
So usually you're crossing straight at right angles to the street, but sometimes like Broadway, the opposite side is
A little
to the
bit
right or to the
right.
left.
Yeah.
And because of the sound, you know you're gonna be veering a little to one side.
Right.
But
It
you
gives-
always try to veer into the intersection so you don't get out, if you're crossing a street, say you don't want to get out on the street that's running perpendicular, so you veer a little bit in, so you don't, get killed.
And I was thinking there is a camp up in Rockland County called Vacation Camp for the Blind. I think they changed the name now.
Visions, did you say?
Yeah, Vision Service something. But this camp is built off a rail system. And maybe you can go up there and check it out in terms of like trying to build terrain for people. But they have a rail system. So you follow the rails all around this 31 acres of property, but using the rails and on the rails. So if I'm walking and I feel tape on the rail and it says 5, 5 pieces of tape there, that means I'm passing an entrance on my right side. So now you're coming up to dorm 5 on the right side, but the rail keeps going. And then every path, every section has its own way by using this rail system.
That's great.
Yeah, and they do it with ramps. They do it with mats. So if there's a path that's coming up, it's telling you that there's a turn on your off side, the one that you're not touching. That mat is telling you, okay, you're at a turn if you want to make that turn.
You might want to look up also, I could send you that thing, Tactile City, which is also trying to develop a language for where the entrances are, where the bus stop is, where the trash can is. But before I go to that, I just want to say that there's a proposal, there's a proposal to add a tactile diagram above the APS boxes, the yellow boxes that beep, so you know where they are. Done by Touch Graphics, Steve Landau is the president. And these diagrams will give additional information about the crossing, the width of the street there. You can feel the diagram, the width of the street, the number of traffic lanes it has, the direction of traffic flow, and whether there's a mid-street island or a bike lane.
And where would this be?
They're going to be on, if it's going to be tested, or perhaps it was tested this summer at 23rd and 7th. And if it's approved of, it will be on every APS box.
The bike
See,
lanes really screw you up.
The bike lanes are very bad for blind people. That is really, and the electric cars are going to be the other thing. But the bike lanes are horrible. But I don't know. Map reading for me is not. I never got it. I can't read a map for nothing, no matter how you feel it, how it works. I'm waiting for them to perfect it. It's already here, where you will have an app that will tell you when the light changes.
Right, so you don't have to.
So that, then this way you don't have to walk up. What are you gonna do in the winter? Take your gloves off, go feel the thing, wait around.
Forget it, yeah.
There's about 5 lights went by.
The other issue with the beeping and so on, I think Joan brought this up, is that when you're using sound, you also have to consider the sounds that are around in the surrounding, or else the sounds can't be heard.
Yeah, it's really hard. I had a perforated eardrum in my right ear that's been successfully 100% corrected. But when I had a minor temporary hearing loss, it was unbelievable to get around. And it just gets worse the longer you do it. It's because you don't really wind up getting used to it, because you're so freaked out. It just gets worse. Or if you have a cold, my ears stop up. So if I can't hear as well, or if it's variable enough that there has to be another alternative, so you don't have to use it.
And you know what the amazing thing is, though, is when you do have a cold and you lose your ears or something like that, that is the only time that I really feel like I'm blind.
Yeah.
Then I go like, okay, now I'm blind. Because that hearing, and this, I have a friend that he's blind, but he also has no sense of smell. And you know, we always tease him and everything, but man, I can't imagine going somewhere and not smelling. That's how I recognize neighborhoods. You know, that's how I know what stores I'm passing, like you said. So not having these other senses to deal with the blind thing, you need them all.
Well, and they're not, people have this mistaken mythology that says, well, if you don't see, then you have super hearing. I don't have super hearing. I can't hear dog whistles, but everybody thinks I can. I do have perfect pitch. That has nothing to do with my vision. That's a musical thing for any of you who are musicians or know what that is. But the hearing just, it's not that it's specifically special or, like dog whistle here. It's not that. It's just that you use it more. It is not better. It is simply more used. And that's the big difference that people really don't understand.
And I did this thing for this exhibit that was here in Manhattan called Dialogue in the Dark. And it was taking sighted people through an hour tour of different galleries, Central Park, Subway, supermarket in there, but in total darkness for an hour. And I was your guide. And when people first started, they were like, I can't do this, man, because I can't see. They tried everything, putting their hands up on it, but it's totally dark in there. But once you as a guide get them to relax that first 10 minutes, you'll start to automatically, you'll start to use your nose. You'll start to use your ears to follow my voice because you don't want to get lost. You'll start to use your nose because you want to know what fruit you're smelling. You'll start to use your hands to protect yourself. When you get up at night to go to the bathroom and it's dark, the first thing that pops up are what? Your hands. The other senses automatically take over.
I've actually been a sighted guide, and I'm not sighted. But I've been a sighted guide for other people who are not sighted, and it's like you just take on twice as much, but you do it because you're familiar with the area, whatever. And it's very tiring, I have to tell you, but I have done it, and it's very hard.
I think one thing that's becoming clear here is that not to depend on one option. I mean, Frank seems to like oral directions. Someone else may like tactile. So
Right.
having a variety of options can be important because you never know who your user is going to be.
I think Frank and I, too, are both very good at, I know I am, and I have a feeling he is, too, are very good at giving directions. Because we have to know.
That's what I'm saying. Blind people, if you want detail, you want direction, ask a blind person.
They know exactly.
They'll get you right to the doorknob.
The subway, the bus system.
But here's a crazy thing that New York City did. They put the Braille on the side of the subways. Tell you what train this is. Well, how do we know where that is? Well, down in the subway, they got Braille on some of the poles. Well, how do we know where that is? They should have included a sound that would direct us to this Braille, so that then we can read it.
It's like the Braille on the bank machines that is just, it's totally window dressing. It does you no good at all. and the banks don't know or don't care.
So when you build that home for me, I want sound, smell, and a lot of, yeah, good, but really, the sound and smell, I would say, is the biggest thing.
Before we turn from navigation turn to the home, the inside of the home, Frank, could you say a little about Ira Google Glass?
Wow, this is a tremendous innovation that this Indian man, East Indian man, has started called AIRA, A-I-R-A. What it is a, right now they're using a Google Glass, but in January they're gonna have their own smart glass. It will be able to read text when you look at it. It'll just start reading. But the beautiful thing about this this thing is that you are hooked up to a live, what they call, agent. So you have a Bluetooth in your ear, and you're wearing the glass with a camera. That person on their computer will be able to feed me real time as I'm walking or need something to be read, anything that your eyes, that I need your eyes for. So what you do is they have a split screen, the agent. One is Google, and it's GPS, tells the agent exactly where I am, and the other side is the split screen looking at whatever I'm looking at. So it's a tremendous, this thing is going to be a game changer. People use it now, blind people are using it like crazy, going in and out of airports. They used it for the Boston Marathon. The guy ran with his agent in his ear. These agents get paid $15 an hour, and they do shifts, and they're from all over the country, and you do it from your home.
Neat.
So I would love you all to check this out, because like I said, it's brand new, and it's only gonna get better. And for the blind person, we just tap the thing, the next available agent picks up, says, "Hi Frank, how are you?" I go, "Hi, how are you? Here's what I want done. I need something to be put together." So she'll read the instructions, take a picture, or I can say, I just walked from 96th Street down to 59th Street through Central Park. Unfortunately, I just put my dog down about 6 weeks ago. But I have never walked through the park by myself. It's always with the dog or with a person. This time I just took my cane, used this IRA agent. We walked everywhere I wanted to go in Central Park, and the beautiful thing is I was all alone. I didn't have to rely on anyone. I didn't have to wait for anyone. I didn't have to go this place because I'm trying to please someone. This was all me. And when they walk by, they're describing what's going on, what I'm passing, different stuff. And if I say, okay, I want to take a picture of that horse, they'll take the picture from the camera. It comes right to my photo gallery. And it's just, check it out. AIRA.
Wow, you should
So
try
cool.
that in a boat by yourself.
Well, that is, Joan.
That's something I could never do as a kid. I
Well-
wanted to sail by myself, and my mom would never let me do it.
Well, I'm getting ready to go out to the rowboat in Central Park and do it.
That's great.
And go roller skating. So those are the two things I used to love to do. I'm going to do it with this.
That's
So,
awesome.
thank you.
So
So
awesome.
as we get nearer to the inside of the home, which I know is more your area, perhaps, I want to mention one other thing that Chris Downey proposed, which works on the design challenge of finding fixtures in the environment and avoiding them when they're in the path of travel. He has a proposal with two parts. First, he would create a planter strip, a strip with plants bordering the edge of the sidewalk, stopping at the corner curb cut. And in that plant-filled area, he would put the bus stop, a bike rack, a trash can, and anything needed in a pedestrian's travels would be in among the plants. Pedestrians would always know where to find them. The planter strip would beautify the area. Walkers would enjoy the flowers for their scent, their sound in the wind, or their visual qualities. In between the planter strip and the buildings, travelers would circulate. And the planter strip, as Frank mentioned before, would have on its ground surface a different texture from the circulation area, so that a person using a mobility cane could feel that difference and let that guide his or her movement. This technique of cane use is called shorelining. It helps one's path stay straight or curved as the landform necessitates.
I just heard a word I don't like,
What was that?
curb cut.
Okay.
People think that they're helpful, and they are, and they should be there. But the problem is they're so close to a sidewalk. I tell people this, and they think I'm kidding, but I am not. I really crossed 3rd Avenue one day from curb cut to curb cut and didn't even know it. Always, always, when you cross the street with a sightless person, use the curb.
So you like that firm definition from
You
when you're on the
need-
sidewalk
you need-
to the
You need
street?
the information of, that was a step, the street is over.
Well, see, here's where Joan and I disagree a little bit there. I think the curb, I mean, if I'm walking with someone, you take me wherever you want it, you gotta go. My cane is still following
Right.
the walk. But on 6th Avenue, like where the curb cuts are closely, are flushed with the thing, they have, like a grid that changes.
Right,
So
but
it's
they
rough.
don't always have that, so I'm saying when they don't, and you're crossing with someone, use the curb.
Yeah, well, I mean,
You know,
like I
whatever
said,
works,
Yeah,
but-
whatever, but, yeah, the curb cuts, for a while, they didn't even have, you just walked like Joan did. She walked across 3rd Avenue.
Yeah, I mean, you can't tell,
Yeah.
they're so light and so low, you can't tell that they're not just some crack in the frickin' sidewalk, and you wind up on the other side of 3rd Avenue going, what the? So, you have to be a little careful of those.
So a
And
second,
people
But
don't,
the
and
only thing
people
I don't-
don't know about the thing by the subway either, the thing where
The rail.
where the changes, right by the train, where
Oh,
the,
the line.
the people don't know about that. I don't know how many times a day I have to explain that.
what's by the train?
The grid that lets you know that you're close to the platform.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Most
Now,
people,
that has been a tremendous help.
it has, and when you go to look for it, people think you're about to kill yourself.
Right.
Because they
But-
think you're about to get too close to
Right.
the train, but what you're actually doing
Is
is
see.
looking for that grid.
And that grid has saved a lot of lives.
It has.
Because back in the 70s, 60s, maybe early 80s, I forget when the grid started coming in, but blind folks were falling off the platform on a regular.
Pam, remember?
Oh, yeah.
I had a-
I've
I had
I've
a-
lost 3 friends.
I had to do that memorial service thing for her.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
God.
So the grid really helps. Now, it's no different than sighted people using the line to drive.
But they don't know
That's
that,
right.
and they get all hysterical when when they're standing on the subway with you. Suddenly there are platforms full of strangers yelling at you, and you're
Right.
going, "What's the
okay.
problem here?" You know?
But the thing I don't understand, like what Karen is talking about, and I still don't get it, maybe I just don't get it. If you put planters all along the curves going, all over the city, well then how do you get in and out of a bus, a car, in the middle of the sidewalk to go to the building, you know what I'm saying? If the planter's gonna be going all the way down,
Right.
you gotta go through the planter to get.
Well, I will mention that to Chris.
It might have to be spaced.
Right.
Frank,
But
there
how-
might be some kind of spatial.
So they're gonna have to put it like that in every instance.
You would have to
You talk
do
about
that,
money.
yeah.
Well, perhaps you could cut it, this is what I guess you're suggesting, doing, have a number of entrances or cuts through paths through
The planter, so
Right.
but
But
otherwise
because
nobody's
it's
gonna
not
get anywhere.
uniform, it's gonna be tough to do. I mean, every block is different, right?
what do you
Yeah.
mean, it's not uniform?
Well, I mean, the spatial in itself, so it would seem like it would cost a lot of money to make the planters fit each block.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and then, so that just seems, I mean, that's a great idea though.
I'll just mention one other thing about Downey's proposal, and that is, he also thought about placing the amenities in the area close to the building, which is called, as you guys probably know, the pop-out zone, where businesses can set items for sale, racks of clothing, a bay window can project into that zone, and planters could enhance that as well. Then the bike rack, the bench, the trash can could be found next to the building. You could have a planter strip also, but people would walk in between the planter strip and the pop-out zone. Chris's concern is that he is against tactile strips or the grooved strip in Japan because he feels they segregate. What he has designed is something, an area where everybody would circulate, and where the amenities everybody would know where they were. So that's a kind of a dialogue that's
Right,
going on.
right.
Interesting.
I can dig that, but that to me sounds like that sounds like an NFB thing, because really this organization is about, we don't want to bring any more attention to, if it's not necessary, to the blindness.
Right.
That's why they didn't like the grid on the subway. They didn't want the grid thing on the subway. What are they, nuts? I mean, anything for me that I don't mean to be like that, but I didn't ask for to be blind. But if I'm gonna live here, then make it adaptable enough for me to live here. I'm not worried about what you think about whether it's attracting attention. If it can get me there safe and fast, then that's what I want.
And I think you do so much of it yourself. You know, as you become familiar with the place, you know what to look for, and you know how to fix whatever you need. I think you do a lot of it yourself.
And if he does put stuff on the building side, that's no good, because you have cellar doors that are either open, or you step on it, you fall through. So you don't want to necessarily walk on a building. You got doors that open up, people coming out of stores. So maybe I just don't understand how the planner thing would work. But one of these young, beautiful people might have a great idea next.
Well, maybe there's more discussion to be had, and maybe I can put you guys in touch. We have about a half an hour, and I do want to leave time for questions. And I'll tell you what I had intended to cover, and maybe you can tell me which you think is most important. One is to go inside the home and the kitchen. Joan is somebody's shaking their head, so I guess that's a yes.
Okay.
The cooking.
Okay, the kitchen.
So Joan, you're the cook.
You do a lot of it, well, anyway, you do a lot of it yourself because the world will tell you that it's not cost effective for them to do it, so you want to do it yourself. One of the big things that cooks...
I should interrupt. Joan roasts ham, lamb, beef,
whatever. My nickname among friends is the roaster. But anyway, as long as it's not the rooster, I don't care. So anyway, the deal is basically, one of the things that sightless cooks really hate is packaging. And this is not even kitchen, this is shampoo and conditioner in the same bottle. This same kind of bottle where there's no difference. The difference is only what the bottle says. You have to do that stuff yourself. So you take the tag off the conditioner bottle, and then thereafter you will know it is the conditioner. But you have to do those things yourself. Potato chips and popcorn, I never mix them up because he likes smart food and I like wise, and the potato chips, if you sort of hold the package in your hand and sort of squish it, they feel different, and I never make that mistake. There are very few mistakes I make in dealing with packaging and dealing with this kind of thing, just because I'm so used to it. But when I was a teenager, there's one of those family stories you tell at Christmas, right? About myself and the prescription stuff they gave me for acne. They gave me, it was a little, they gave me the sample and the prescription, and Mom was supposed to fill the prescription, and I ran out of the sample, and Mom told me where the prescription tube was. And I went and got it. It looked exactly, as far as I knew, it looked exactly like the little sample, except bigger. And the day after Christmas, of when I was 15 and my sister was 12, my quite sighted athlete sister was 12, she got up first, which was unusual, and she walked into the bathroom and she looked at the sink. She was picking up toothpaste, I guess, and she said, "Who uses Rinse Away Dandruff shampoo around here?" I said, "Let me see that." I've been using Rinse Away on my face for 2.5 weeks. And the first thing that we did, I mean, there's nothing harmful about that. I watched a friend of my mother's, who is as sighted as you guys are, use peroxide as toothpaste, so it does happen. But we walked downstairs and we said, "Mom, guess what?" And we told her what we had done and what had happened. And my mom looked at me and said, "Well, at least you don't have dandruff on your face." So when she finally did give me the sample tube, the prescription tube, it was indeed larger, and the lid was different from the sample. So I would never have known that.
Now here this is my first time hooking up with Joan in over 20 years, so it's a great reunion. So now I'm trying to get her to go smartphone. I said, you gotta get that iPhone on board.
Oh yeah, because you could probably
you know why?
tell
Because
you.
all of these apps that are in the iPhone, Tapsy, all kind of Be My, well, but the
Tell you what
immediate
kind of
ones
package.
will tell you exactly what you have now.
Exactly, and
So-
that's great, but if for some reason it's not working, or somebody else has it, or then you
Well-
can do it yourself, and that's basically
Well,
what
you can do
learn.
it. Well, and not only that, you have choices to do.
Exactly, so
and then
you'll
you
have a
mark
bunch
it
of
like we
ways.
have a money identifier, so you just hold the phone over the thing. It'll say 1, 10, 20, and then you fold it the way you want.
Right, and that's
Before you
that's
leave.
what you do, ladies, in your purse. You make sure that a purse has a lot of cubbies in it, and you then put whatever set up your own system, and you tell no one
Okay.
what it is.
Money is another issue. I'm not sure we're gonna have time for that, but this issue of packaging is very important, and Joan enlightened me about that, seriously, that, when Joan gets ready to wash her hair, she lifts a bottle and doesn't know if it's shampoo or conditioner because they're identical in shape.
That's not
Same-
always true, but it can be true. It depends on what you use.
But if they're different when you go shopping, as I understand, you will pick a bottle that's different in shape. for
Yes, I
shampoo.
will, because I intend to support that brand. But sometimes it doesn't. When you go to a hotel, you know those little samples they give you, that you go to your room and it's got shampoo. I mean, they're not different, except the ones I saw that had Braille on them, and I went down and congratulated the desk, but that never happens.
And Joan also mentioned that there was a hotel, the Super 8 Motel in
That's
Lee,
right.
Massachusetts, that uses, do you want to describe what?
Used to use Braille and the conditioner and the shampoo were labeled in Braille, just like the diet soda is it McDonald's where they're labeled? One of them is, where you can see on the top of the glass, you'll see diet written on it. So sometimes it happens, but most people will tell you it's not cost effective to do it. They're crazy.
Well, what I was referring to was the Super 8 Motel in Lee, Massachusetts, which you mentioned, which uses a 2-part wall-mounted dispenser with shampoo on the
Yes,
left and conditioner on the right.
That's
from
true.
Dispenser Amenities.
Right, and you just, you know from using it that that's what it's gonna be. And if you're wrong,
We're
you're,
gonna get you that iPhone.
yeah, if you're wrong, you're wrong. But these are all skills that you learn, iPhone or not, so that you have always choices, either to use an iPhone or to use the skills you already learned.
No, but I mean to learn.
Oh, yeah.
To learn what you're looking at.
Right, but
Yeah,
you have to be able to, you have to know how to do it both ways, I think.
And I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
And it's also true, ladies, for instance, Michelle, or I'm blanking on names, if you want to go out and buy, when you buy this great pair of little pumps that you just love, and they come in 6 colors, I can't do that. I can love them, but I can't buy them in all 6 colors unless I make them different. So you put the bow on the red ones and a little dot, you can get a tube that you can squeeze goo and the goo dries, and you can make that a dye. You put that in the blue ones, or you have to do it yourself.
The manager of the Super 8 also said that dispensers are more economical and sustainable than small bottles, as customers rarely use the whole bottle and half-used bottles get discarded.
That's right.
Additionally, he said it's easier in the shower to pump from a dispenser than to fumble with a tiny bottle. But of course, this is really an issue of communication, of the possibility exists to place a raised S for shampoo or C for conditioner,
Right.
or braille letters. This is an opportunity to use touch, tactility. I wanted to go more into controls, but before I do, I want to ask a couple of questions that came out of, what's that?
Oh, and I thought you said they wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, that came out of the assignment that.
Can I just show what Tap Taps I just
Yes,
took a
okay.
picture. Now, I just took a picture of Karen, right, with this app called Tap Tapsy. So, this is what it said, told me.
Picture 1 is woman reading.
Oh.
11:45 a.m. Camera button. Picture 1 is woman reading text on paper.
See that?
Woman reading text on paper.
Remember, text right there. So, if you have
Is
a
this
product, you just take the picture,
Woman
it'll
reading
tell.
text on paper.
Oh.
That's great.
So, Joan and Frank, what kind of lighting do you think is important? You said something about your dog. I'm sorry about that. He likes the lighting from the window, or how was it?
No, I do have an app on here that if I walk into a hotel, I want to know if the light is on or off. This will let me know how bright it is, how dark it is by the sound. Ooh, low sound and a higher sound, the brighter the room. So when I used to come into a hotel at night or something like that, for the dog's sake, I didn't need it, but I know she wanted some light. So I would put that on, boom, and it's, whoa, I know there's no light on, I gotta turn the light on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are there any other considerations of lighting that are important or necessary, Joan?
I don't have to worry much unless, I don't turn the lock at night. I usually hear about it the next day from the husband who says, "And you forgot to turn the lights off." And when I was first dating guys and as a kid, I
What?
thought you could turn the lights down low, which unfortunately meant turning them off fully. I didn't know that, so I got into some trouble. But it's really not a problem for me at all.
What about floor surfaces? Are there any considerations that should be kept in mind for the use of the mobility cane, or
In a home, in the home?
in the home, or would you say in the garden?
Even in the home, different kinds of walkways, runways, carpets, different chains of wood surface, anything like that, But usually the blind person knows their home.
In the home, you don't really use it.
Yeah,
A stranger might, but you
Right.
What about furniture? Is it good to have flexible seating, or should you have a stable situation?
Well, I told Karen the other day, I said, it doesn't matter what you do with furniture, I don't care what kind of furniture, just don't move it and not tell me.
I had a couple of roommates do that to me. I was on concert choir tour in college we did a short 72-hour tour, and I came back, and at 11:30 at night I was dead. And I walk in, and my roommate goes, "Oh, stop, we moved everything." And I was like, "Oh, I can't do this." If you're tired, you just can't handle it. So if somebody's gonna move the furniture, it should probably be you, not your roommates.
This came up also, one of the people I interviewed for the article was Christine Ha, who won MasterChef. She's blind, and she won MasterChef in 2012. And she produces an accessible cooking show on AMI, Accessible Media Incorporated, out of Canada. And her sighted partner, just mentioned during the show, "I won't move any of Christine's tools."
Right.
I mean, to those of us who are not familiar with this is important and
Yeah, you
important
get
to
people
know.
who clean apartments have to know too.
Okay.
If you have someone come in to clean, that they cannot do that.
The one more thing before we move on, again, you know, with the iPhone, stuff like that, it has really, really helped in terms of maintaining your own privacy, because now with all of these apps, there's text-to-speech reading. You point the phone, it'll read whatever's on that paper to me.
Right.
So I can
Which
read
is
my
great.
mail now. I don't have to go to the neighbor. I don't have to ask give my wife. It's mine, you know, and I can read it.
That's great.
So if we go back to cooking for a moment, you use an oven regularly, Joan.
Sure.
How do you make the oven work for you successfully?
Well, this is one thing that you pretty much do yourself. I have a microwave. There are two different ones that are real accessible, and it just has the 1 through 0, like a telephone keyboard, but it's not a key, just the numbers are in place like they would be on a telephone. And you can use that because you can press the numbers and they'll and put them in. So that works very well. And I also have just a regular normal stove. It just so happens, and this has nothing to do with sight, that when you turn the thing on, it'll click, so you'll know it's actually on or off, so you'll know if your burner's out. But for heating temperatures, for like, you know, when you cook and you want, I like to cook roast, for instance, at 325 because that's what I was always taught. There's this, I mentioned it before, there's this tube of gooey stuff you can get, the Lighthouse store sells, and you find yourself a sighted nice husband who cooks, mine does, and you mark with the gooey stuff, you mark the numbers as the knob goes around on your oven or your stove, and the gooey stuff will dry till it's tactily plastic. It's just a dot. And on the burners, I just have it I have high, medium, and low because that's all I need. And on the oven, I have every 50 degrees marked, but I can place the knob between so that I'll get my 325 exactly right, because I can place the knob between, say, 300 and 350, and I know exactly where that is.
So how do you make a meatloaf? How do you pour liquids, things like that? How do you
Well, when I make meatloaf, I use just a regular old big fat mixing, bowl, and I tend to use onions that I don't have to chop, the frozen ones you get, that are in little pieces, so I don't have to chop them. And I could, but I don't like to, so I just don't. And I use whatever amount of hamburger I need. And meatloaf is very tactile, so you wind up mushing it and, a lot. And when you pour it into a pan, you have to take, well, first of all, when you put egg in meatloaf, this is a really good way to explain. When you pour, so this is one of these things, I think one thing that people who are sighted need to know is that people who are not really basically do everything you do, except that they do it slightly differently, and they have different techniques that you wouldn't know. For instance, if I want to put an egg in my meatloaf, and I usually put in 1 egg per 2 pounds of hamburger, you would take the egg and you would mush it. You would tap it on the side of your mixing bowl, and then you would squeeze, because you tapped a hole in the shell, and so you would squeeze it onto the meatloaf that's in the bowl behind where you just tapped the shell. I can't do that because I don't want any shells in my meatloaf. You would see if there were little pieces and you would get them out, but I can't do that. So what I do is I take one of those little pudding dishes that you have in your kitchen, the little Pyrex dishes, and I tap the egg, break the shell, empty the contents of the shell into the pudding dish, examine it with very practiced and very experienced fingers, determine that there are no little pieces of shell in there, then take the little Pyrex dish, and of course there's no problem because the bowl you're pouring it into is way bigger, so you won't spill it. So you just pour it in and then mush it around. You can't pour, a sightless person cannot pour a large pan into a small space because you won't get it accurate, but you can do the other way around. And when you pour, you always make sure that the thing you're pouring from is touching the thing you're pouring into, otherwise you're gonna screw it up.
You know, pouring,
And you use your other hand. So your right hand has the milk, the glass is to the left of your milk, and you're pouring it this way, and it's resting on the glass, and then you take a finger, and you simply stick the finger, and then when the milk hits whatever point on your finger that you want to stop, you just stop.
And they also have gadgets for that also.
Yes, there are gadgets.
So you can stick in the cup, and when it reaches that, it'll beep, beep.
Right,
Yeah.
there are those two.
the liquid level indicator.
Right.
Christine Hanna uses, for cold liquid, she uses a standard Pyrex, she uses a standard Pyrex measuring cup, but does the same thing that Joan does with the oven dial. Her husband puts the tactile silicone dots that harden on half cup and quarter cup, and she puts her finger inside and measures it and matches her thumb inside and the pointer finger outside on one of the tactile dots. And cold liquids are not such a problem. Hot liquids, she feels it would be important to have a separate measuring cup for a quarter cup, a separate measuring cup for half cup, and use, this is it, a liquid level indicator to sit
Yeah,
on.
because you can't touch it.
Sit on the rim of the cup, and when the water comes, if the liquid comes near it, it beeps and then it changes sound and lets you know when it's reached the top or the appropriate level. You would have to have room for these prongs left at the top. I'm just going to mention the issue of controls, and then I'd like to hear any questions that you have. The pots, the appliances such as rice cookers and pressure cookers come with many choices today. Prepare yogurt, prepare rice, and you know, what Joan was, she mentioned the microwave that now has braille, but if you look at a typical microwave, there are, you know, maybe 12 options, and memorizing is out of the question. So anything that, or probably Joan can do it, anything that makes memorization of a layout of controls easier, such as a circle of, an arrangement in a circle of buttons, or different shaped buttons, or different textured buttons.
The problem is with all of this, and this is going, you know, those are really beautiful things to kind of rely on, but we're getting away from the tactile buttons. Everything is touchscreen now.
Right.
Yeah.
So even these appliances now are governed by apps in the iPhone.
Right.
So it's going to be harder and harder to buy a product with external buttons.
It is.
You'll see in the article, if you have a chance, a couple of examples of rice cookers and smart cookers that make the controls easy to understand and memorize.
Right, you either have to do it yourself or you have to use an app on a phone because they're not going to change it, so.
Because there's Joe Wheeler, an architect from the University of Virginia, has designed something called Future House, Haus, which you may be familiar with. And there are controls where you can change the temperature of your home from far away, remotely and stuff. Well, when designing those controls, one really should keep in mind the ability to remember those controls if you are not, able to use the visual. Do you have any questions for Joan or Frank? I know I haven't.
And please don't ask anything you
Don't
want.
hesitate.
You can hurt my feelings.
So,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
yes, so just for, in terms of entertainment, because we're designing a home and
Uh-huh.
we have kids and things like that, how do you entertain, what is the entertainment system in your home like, for example? I mean, you must want to read books, you must want to watch TV, you must want to listen to radio. How is that set up? We're just curious.
When I came in, Joan and Frank were discussing the latest, was it football or basketball? I'm not. But
Baseball.
Baseball.
Okay. My husband's a Cubs fan.
What do you do as
I
far as
don't
entertainment?
know, again, I know I'm getting redundant, but the technology, I'm into that. The iPhone thing, I was telling Joan, 20 years ago, we had to have a whole room of equipment just to kind of stay a year behind the public. So in other words, all the books we got were all over a year old or more because they had to put them on recordings to read. We had a braille, and it was huge. It was a huge box. We had a braille writer. We had a typewriter. We had a printer. We had a tape recorder,
And
reel
yeah,
to
we
reel
all
tape
made it through
recorder.
school somehow.
All of this stuff now is right here. I can read my books. I hook this right up to my stereo, call any music I want, and just hook it up to your stereo. You're good to go. TV, I have everything in there: Fire Stick, Netflix, YouTube. It's all in there.
Right.
It's all in there. So, and believe me, I have some great speakers at home because I love music. You put this phone in there. I remember having parties and all the CDs were all over the place. Now you got to find the covers, put them back in. It's just a whole nother. We're in a whole nother game.
It's great.
And then you can use all of these home controls that are in your phone. You can use your phone to turn off and on anything in your house. Thermostats, lights, the water outside, the garage door, whatever.
It seems like you have really embraced technology, and in fact, a lot of the outcomes of designing a smart home is that everything's integrated into technology, into this iPhone, is everything's connected through Wi-Fi or through the internet, and in many ways, you're above and beyond us, because I don't even know how to set up my home to turn on the lights through my phone or read the temperature of my home, because I can simply just look at it, or I can simply look at the temperature gauge. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because that really will change the way we design. In fact, I think we need to incorporate more technology into our homes. And it's fascinating just hearing both of you talk about being visually impaired, and we were thinking of designing things physical, like something that's more tactile, like you said. But it seems like it's shifting away from that, because it's all digital computer screens, even microwaves or refrigerators, in the future might have these buttons that are not tactile. It's basically just a slick glass screen. So thank you for sharing that. I'm very happy that
I think it has
Well,
to
on
be both.
on one side, it's bad. It's that we're losing that. But because of speech recognition, it's mattering less and less whether it's touch or not, because we're getting more interaction with voice recognition. Now you can just ask more of these things. When you get on the telephone and you get Julie from the Long Island Railroad, or you get, so they're all now artificial intelligence that you can speak to, and you won't have to really know how to use a smartphone to do whatever.
What was the one? It was Con Edison I called the other day, and I got a real person, and I said, your speech system lady has got to go. I am a professional singer, my diction is excellent. Either this gets fixed, or I go elsewhere, it's very simple.
Mm.
You know, as I was trying to go over this material, what I learned from discussing with Joan and Frank and other people, and see if I could find ways it would be applicable to what I learned to your program. I thought of one thing, which was Joan selected. Tell us how you selected your wedding dress, and see how this could be applied to when you're involving clients in selection of materials.
Well, I was smart. I selected my wedding dress with my mother, the former model. So I had that in my corner to start with. I know what wedding dresses are made of, usually chiffon or satin or whatever. But you know, it's one of those things, you go shopping for a wedding dress, you want to take your mom. So of course I took my mom. And I always, you know, when you go to friends' weddings and you get to feel their dress, I always thought, you know, the Empire line, ladies, right, looks like, I've always felt like it looks like they poured the bride into the dress and she's gonna die if she doesn't breathe. And I remember saying to Mom, I really don't want an Empire dress. I want a sweetheart, you know, regular waist, full skirt, A-line, whatever, but because I don't want to feel like I got poured into it. And as a singer, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with an Empire. I don't usually like to deal with Empire lines as a singer. So I said, I really hope that's not what I wound up with. I wound up with the only Empire waist-lined wedding dress I have ever liked, because it was chiffon and the material doesn't stiffen. So you don't feel like they poured the poor bride into this stiff satin and they can't breathe. So this was definitely my mom's coup, that she saw this dress and said, you have to try this, it's chiffon. And she was exactly right. It did exactly what I needed it to do. It was beaded, and I know what seed pearls are, and I know what, you know, all of that. So it was, and it had sleeves. The sleeves and the top were made of, they call it illusion, you know, that see-through stuff. And it was for me, and also the dress, because it's chiffon, it moves the skirt, you know, when you walk, you know, it moves very nicely, and it doesn't feel like they poured you into this dress and you can't move. So it was kind of the perfect dress.
But what Joan didn't mention is that she felt these selections on bride dolls.
I did some of that, yes.
Uh-huh.
Not the dress I wanted and not the dress I picked, but the first thing I did, instead of, you know, the bridal magazines with the glossy pages, I went out and looked at dolls.
But you know, when I was thinking, you were saying that you wanted more tactile stuff. You're thinking that would go along with that. But
Yes.
really, when you think in terms of building a home for a blind person, at least, just be cognizant and conscious of the fact that soundscapes make a difference. So
Okay.
soundscapes and change of texture in where we walk and touch to indicate different areas.
You mentioned
Those are the main things.
smell to indicate.
Smell is very beautiful. You know, it's just that once you're in your home, you know, you have your own smells out there, right? So you know, I don't know what you would do outside. Let's say if you have a garden over here, maybe you would have something for that. You know?
Would you ever use smell as a wayfinding solution somehow?
Well, that's how I used to do it, walking through neighborhoods. That's how I knew what neighborhood is. And I smell Chinese food. Wow.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
Oh, I
If-
smell Spanish. You know.
If you read To Catch an Angel, that's how Robert Russell got around New York City, by smelling where restaurants were
Yeah.
and where things were.
What about in a home? Would that even be possible, that smell could be used as a navigation tool somehow? Just a curiosity.
Sure, I think, but again, the blind person probably knows the home pretty well.
I
And
see.
they're gonna set it up.
And they're gonna set it up to whatever they want. So
Got it.
I might have in my office smells of oil
Mm.
or myrrh or something like that because I want to relax, in there. But that would be my own preference.
Got it.
But to have when we did this dialogue in the dark, though, we had one gallery there that was Times Square, and we had the sounds of traffic. We had two parked cars out in the street there, but we also had the hot dog stand, and you had the smell of the hot dog, the mustard, coming out of these things,
Which is
Well, what
great.
about in a hotel or an office building? Maybe smell could be
Mhm,
wayfinding in that.
Definitely,
Environment.
definitely, if you can exaggerate the smell of a drugstore that you're passing, because all of these stores have smells. The hardware store smells different than the shoe store. It's just being aware of it, that's all.
And you remember
Your
it.
smell is my nose is not any different than yours, like Joan was saying. It's just go to the store when you walk in, take a whip and put it in there. And you'll say, wow, oh yeah, okay, that's a shoe, that's leather.
And you remember it. I remember the smell of the house I grew up in from the time I was 2.5 until I was 9. I could recreate it if I had to. I mean, the smells are our memory.
Now, you may want, when you're designing the home too, again, for a blind, you may want to subtly figure out some way, maybe you could use smell or sound at the approach of the house. So now I'm walking down the sidewalk, I know my house is coming up because I hear it or I smell it.
Right.
Or mobile chimes in the wind chimes.
Yeah, any kind of sound, anything that, that will tell you that you're coming near your home.
Right, I like what Joan said. You said that smell basically helps you recall certain memories, and even for for someone that does not have visual impairment, that's like a very good
I
statement.
can always find my building because the awning that's in front of it has two, poles that hold it up. And there's climber plants on the, so all I have to do is look for the climber plants. My cane's name is Killer, and a killer hits that pole, and I just, this is almost just turning to gold.
Or you just may
Where's my
hear that
key?
thing blowing in the
Yeah,
wind.
and so you know exactly
You know
where
that's,
you are.
your home,
Yeah.
I have just possibly one last question. A lot of our students are designing for daylight, meaning they're trying to maximize the amount of daylight in their homes because, we as humans, possibly for the sighted folks, and this is more of a curiosity question, we go by the circadian biorhythm, meaning we respond to the daylight, right? So when it's lit, imagine a farmer scenario. The farmer gets up in the morning because
Right,
there's sunlight.
exactly.
You go to
I
sleep
know
because
exactly
it's
what you're
dark.
talking about.
And us sighted folks, we live by that rhythm. You don't have access to daylight necessarily in
Sightless
terms of.
people have a problem that bothers some of us, and you've heard the ads, I'm sure, called non-24.
Interesting. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Non-24, which I have, is a problem where your body doesn't, because you don't deal with the daylight darkness difference, your body doesn't respond, the sleep-wake mode doesn't respond. So and I'm much better at, once you kind of schedule yourself, it's a little easier, but you don't fall asleep till you're tired, and tired when I was in high school was math class, okay? So, it's like, it's not the same circadian rhythm that, it's more than 24 hours. And it takes you a while and possibly some melatonin to sort of get your body to where it schedules itself that way. But it took me really through, I think maybe into college, because college I was so freaking busy I couldn't see straight. So I think that's when it happens. But a lot of that is your scheduling, and so the daylight thing doesn't matter until you're dealing with time yourself. You have to be in class at 8:30 or whatever it is, and then your body will snap in. But it is a problem, and sightless people do have it, and particularly people who lose vision, where they used to see daylight and suddenly they're like lost, and but it is a diagnosable condition, and doctors will deal with it, and melatonin is one of the ways that they will, if for sleep. Because the melatonin, the chemical, is in your body is made when you take in light. So people without vision and people without light perception don't make enough, and sometimes it involves needing to take it.
Interesting.
I think I didn't. I
It's
think
a-
I didn't answer your question.
And it's an ongoing
Mm.
thing now. They do a lot of work on this up in Boston. My friend
Oh,
went,
yes.
went 10 weeks. They got her up in there, and they took, first they monitored her for 3 months. Then they took her in there for 10 weeks without a watch, window, so you can't feel the sun. And then they were trying to see, if this rhythm thing really made a difference. Now you can now again, you can with all the new technology, you can train your body
And
to
that's
the
what you wind
daylight
up
and-
doing. Yeah, that's
and
what
night.
you wind up doing
because you can set
of
your thing,
schedule.
and it'll say to you, something will happen that you'll know the sun is getting ready to come up,
Mm.
and your body will get used to that.
So I would consider, I would say for your purposes then, that if you're gonna design a home for someone who is not sighted, go ahead with the daylight stuff, because it actually kind of helps.
Mm.
Are there any other questions?
Nothing like good sunshine.
Oh, yeah, you got it.
The only question I have is that when you're on a surface walking, do you only prefer smooth surfaces? Like, for instance, if you were walking on very small pieces of gravel, things like that, does that feel dangerous to you, or does it not feel comfortable?
For me, I'm very comfortable with gravel, and again, it's not so much the surface, it's the changes of surface. So if you have a consistency of gravel, then you know that that's what we're walking on. Your feet will adjust to that.
And girls, there is no excuse without being sighted, about not being sighted. There is no excuse to not wear heels, okay? Every sightless person wears heels.
Not me.
Not me. Not me.
Every sightless girl can wear heels, it's not a problem.
Yeah,
So same with, say, grass or, something like that?
same thing, as
Yeah,
long as it's
as long as you
consistent.
know what it
As
is.
long as it's consistent?
Yeah, as long as it's consistent. And then let's say you're walking on that and the texture changes because you're indicating an entrance coming up or something, then you change the texture right there.
One thing I never like, and this is just me, but I'm never fond of buildings where you have to go down steps to get in, like the cleaner on 72nd Street that I use, where you open the door and there are 2 steps down. I find that annoying. I'll do it, but I don't have to like it.
Could I just add one
Yes.
thing, and then I'd like to ask a final question if there are not any other, if there's time for that.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Okay. Christine noted that she prefers, in an airport, for instance, the family restroom or the accessible restroom because her husband can assist her there, and he can't assist her in a public restroom, in the women's room, to find the trash can, the hand dryer, and so on. And she made a wonderful suggestion about a group of individual door-enclosed stalls around a common communal sink. So anybody could use whichever bathroom they wanted, and everybody would use the same sink. And I added to that, perhaps there could be a separate group of door-enclosed stalls for men and a separate group of door-enclosed stalls for women, and then a communal sink. I thought that was an important discussion.
I still wouldn't want, is a woman gonna really still feel comfortable going in the bathroom with men in there?
No.
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 So I wouldn't.
I don't really need any assistance, so I don't see.
And really now they're making the bathrooms for accessibility, so use them, it's unisex.
I don't find that I need my husband's assistance.
Right, but if they need to use them, but
Well, she was newly blind.
That's
She
true,
wasn't
and that's
blind.
quite different, so I think maybe we should point out, and Frank certainly has also, people who are new at being unsighted are much different than people like Frank and I who just go. It's completely different, and I think that's worth mentioning.
Well, one good thing though, is that they do say that if that person accepts losing their sight, 3 to 5 years, they're probably gonna be moving around better than the person that was blind all their life. Because they remember the visuals. They know what a straight line looks like. So, but again, it depends on how
How well they do.
well you adjust.
Mhm.
You know.
Would you mind, Priscilla, if I asked if people, students, or
Mhm.
designers could just say one thing that they took away from this, that they gave?
Oh yeah, sure. Why don't we go around? Michelle, one thing, one
We
takeaway.
We hope you had fun.
One thing you learned.
One thing that I learned that I've never really thought about before was the fact that you really need to count on your other senses, specifically your ears, when you can't see. So I found the stories interesting.
Thank you.
What I found interesting was the importance of texture and sound, and how different sounds make a difference. If that makes sense.
To indicate.
To indicate
entrances.
spaces and how, for example, a loud sound will indicate maybe a bigger room
Mhm.
and so on and so forth.
Or as Frank said, the fact that the light was,
On and
Right.
off, yeah.
Yep.
I learned about how much technology you use.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was fascinated by the idea that a flat surface like the iPhone can have so much help, because you would think it would need like buttons and more stuff to touch, but rather the flat screen works for
Right.
everything too.
Yeah, I learned about the consistency of the texture and the surface.
Yeah.
Consistency of texture, what do you mean by that?
And the floor and the wall, the surface. You know,
Right.
The materials.
So that they can communicate that
Yes.
it's. Thank you all so much.
We hope you had fun.
Well, listen,
Very
man,
interesting.
yeah.
Thank you.
When you build that house, you know,
Why don't we give them a
Okay.
round of applause? Yep.
and to you too.
Great, thank you very much.
I'd like to give you guys my card, in case you wanna come down here, some music,
FrankSenior.com is his website.
and
Oh,
please
I'm
come
gonna
up
fry
and
mine
grab
in
it.
just a minute.